Okay, hello again. It's Dr. Lindsay. And in this first video here, we're going to be going through the difference between prices and a change in prices, inflation, hyperinflation, official use of dollars, the costs and benefits to inflation, and optimal inflation. So first, think about this. If tomorrow morning when you woke up and prices were exactly double what they are today, your rent is double, tuition's double, everything, groceries are double. But if you have a job, your wages have gone up. They've doubled too. And the money in your bank account is doubled. The savings account is doubled. If you own anything, a car, the value of it is doubled. All these things, these assets, your wealth is doubled too. And then prices don't go up anymore. It's just a one-time thing. Is it really going to make much difference? Probably not. Everything is the same as it was before. So the level of prices isn't particularly important. So level of prices, not important. It really doesn't matter if Starbucks costs $5 and you make $10 an hour, or it costs $10 for a Starbucks and you make $20 an hour. The ratio is the same. It doesn't make any difference. But what's important is the change in prices. So the change of prices is important. And that change in prices is inflation if prices go up, or deflation if prices go down. And usually this inflation, deflation is measured in terms of a year. So it'll be something like, say, 5% per year, 2% a year, 10% a year, something like that. Now, of course, if it's really going up a lot, then it may be measured in shorter time periods. And when inflation gets really bad, it's referred to as hyperinflation. And the symbol that I use for inflation is the pi symbol. Now, hyperinflation is when inflation is greater than 50% per month. That's a lot. It doesn't happen very often. It happened in Germany in the 1920s. So 1920s Germany, and inflation was 500% a month. 500% per month. It happened in this country in the 1700s during the American Revolution. There was some hyperinflation with their new currency that they printed. They probably just printed too much of it because they're trying to finance a war. One of the most recent ones was Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe in 2008. And that approached 231 million% per year. Recently, there's been some hyperinflation, I believe, in Venezuela. I talked to someone that lived through that hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, and he said that prices were going up so fast, something that might cost $2 in the morning is $4 in the evening, and $8 tomorrow. Prices were going up that fast. And when that happens, then you want to get rid of your money as fast as you can. They have the Zimbabwe dollars. They tried to either sell them, spend them as fast as they could, or convert them to another currency, put them in euros or US dollars or hold it in gold, something like that, because you certainly didn't want to hold on to these Zimbabwe dollars when they were becoming worthless by the minute. So many countries around the world actually start using dollars instead of their own currency. And the reason is because they've got inflation. They can't control the inflation. And then people don't want to hold their own currency, and they start looking for something else to hold and trade. So in Zimbabwe, they actually switched over and started, for a while, they made the US dollar their official currency. They traded that. And it wasn't too hard for them to switch over because people were already using dollars by that time anyway, when it comes to an end. Hyperinflations never end well. It's not like they go up to hyperinflation, then they come back down, and then the money's useful again. No, the money becomes absolutely worthless after hyperinflation. And that usually throws the economy into some sort of deep depression also. So they start using some other currency if they can. In the past, Ecuador, made the US dollar their official currency. Panama made their currency the US dollar. El Salvador uses the US dollar. Several countries use it unofficially, like Cambodia. You can use US dollars or their currency. If you go to an ATM, you can just take the money out in dollars if you prefer and spend that. People will be glad to take it. You just have to be careful when you go to an ATM machine. You don't see somebody, there's people watching you that want to pickpocket. One country, they're very poor, but they're very skilled in pickpocketing. I say that from personal experience with my iPhone. So we had Panama, El Salvador. If you go down the Caribbean, they'll usually take dollars too. Most of the countries, they're happy to take them. And then unofficially, many places you can spend it. And the reason usually is because they don't trust their own currency because there's so much inflation going on. Now in Argentina, they use the peso. And what they'll do every now and then is they'll say, okay, bring in your pesos, your old pesos, and we'll give you a new peso. So we bring in like 1,000 old pesos. And they'll give you one new peso. And then they stop trading those old pesos. And the purpose of it is just to bring down the denomination levels. You're not spending 5 million pesos for a Coke or 1 billion pesos for a car. So they'll do this now and then. And since I believe like 1964, they've lopped off about 13 zeros off of their currency. So that means 1 peso now is worth the equivalent of so 1,000 million billion trillion 10 trillion pesos. So 10 trillion pesos in 1964, which is a heck of a lot of money. If you just hung on to them and just turned them into the new pesos over time and kept the money in a room, would be worth about 1 peso today, which is worth like something like 35 cents. Not worth very much. So by holding on to a currency where there's inflation, the currency becomes slowly worth less and less. And that's why people don't want to hold their money if there's a lot of inflation. They'll switch to holding something else like US dollars. We refer to that as an inflation tax. It's a tax on you for holding money. Now there are costs of inflation. And probably one of the biggest costs of inflation is this inflation tax. Essentially, anyone is holding money has their money drop in value while they're holding it. It's like a tax. Many books will say something like, well, borrowers gain and lenders lose when there's inflation, but that's not necessarily true. It's only unexpected inflation that causes problems where borrowers gain and lenders lose. So I'll write that as pi sub e as expected inflation, and pi sub u is unexpected inflation. So if inflation is not equal to what people are expecting, if inflation is not equal to expected inflation, then there's going to be some unexpected inflation. And that's where we have a problem where lenders lose and borrowers gain. See, if everyone expects a 10% inflation over the next year, then whenever you loan somebody some money, you're going to charge them a lot more for the money. You're going to add on another 10% that they got to pay you back because inflation is going to be coming. So if everyone expects the inflation is coming, it's not expected at all, then you can prevent yourself from getting hurt from it. It's only this unexpected inflation that causes these winners and losers to occur because of inflation. Now, there are some benefits to inflation. The economists think there's a number of benefits to having some inflation. It might seem kind of weird if you say, well, what do you think is the optimal amount of inflation? You probably say, well, 0 would be best. And that's what economists used to think. 0 is probably best, until that became a possibility in this country where we might have a 0 inflation. And then economists said, well, do we really want 0? What is the optimal amount of inflation? And currently, the thinking is that the optimal amount of inflation, if I can get my pen to work here, is 2%. No theoretical justification for 2%. Why not 1.5%? Why not 3%? That's not clear. But it is felt that a little bit of inflation is actually good for the economy. I mean, we wouldn't have an optimal inflation of 2% if there wasn't some benefit to having some inflation. We know too much inflation is not good, like hyperinflation, but a little inflation seems to be just fine, and countries grow just fine with a little bit of inflation. Now, exactly what these benefits are is beyond the scope of this class of getting into exactly why there's a number of benefits. There's like 3 or 4 reasons why economists think inflation is good. I will go over just one in this class, and that is that there's a correlation found between growth and inflation. Countries that have a little inflation seem to grow just fine, no problem, 3 or 4 or 5%. It doesn't hurt them, they grow well. But countries that have some deflation or no inflation at all don't seem to grow very well. It's this correlation here, association between no growth and deflation, and not just a lot of deflation, just a little bit of a deflation. This is 0.5% or so seems to be associated with no growth in a country. So that reason alone is why a number of economists think that we should have some inflation. This would be an empirical argument here, econometric case for having some inflation. And since we don't want to have deflation, then we better err on the side of, say, 2 or 3%. That gives us a little cushion, because we're right at 0. Maybe sometimes we're going to be above it, sometimes we're going to be below it. We don't want to go below it. So maybe it's better off if we just had some average inflation of 2 or 3%. That way, sometimes we'll be a little bit below it, but we won't be down in the negative territory, and we'll be okay. So we'll call this the econometric case. Metric case. Okay, some inflation associated with countries that grow well. and deflation associated with countries that don't grow. The argument against this, though, is that causality. Is there causality here? And where does causality arise? Is it the inflation or deflation that's causing the low growth, or is it the low growth that's causing the deflation? But there does seem to be some good reasons here why maybe some inflation essentially acts to grease the wheels of the economy a little bit. That's about all I can say for now. Okay. So the next video will be on the causes of inflation, and that will be all for this video. If I can figure out how to turn off the button. Sunlight here, it's worse.